In round 4 of the Sinquefield Cup, Magnus Carlsen was playing against Gata Kamsky. Kamsky, at 39 years old, is the veteran of the tournament. Of course, a very, very strong player, but having a tough time here with half out of 3. So could Carlsen keep up the pressure and try to catch up Nakamura? Let's see what happened. Kamsky with the white pieces, and Carlsen plays absolutely solidly, allowing the Spanish. And here, instead of bishop a4, Kamsky played the exchange variation. This was rehabilitated by Bobby Fischer in 1966 when he scored some remarkable victories with it at the Havana Olympiad. Well, maybe you need to be a Fischer to try and exploit White's advantage here. The idea is that you try to use your superior pawn structure to try and force a win in some endgame. The disadvantage is that you actually allow Black very, very easy free development. You can see straight away that Black's bishops have an excellent range here. Carlsen didn't try to play any tricky variation. He played the absolute main line, f6, has a solid reputation, a good reputation. Okay, and here we can see White's plan. You see, after Black takes, then White has a 4 against 3 pawn majority, and slowly you try to exploit this. Carlsen played bishop g4. It's the main line, the absolute main line. And here, well, Fischer played c3 on one occasion and managed to win a game, but I mean, since those games, of course, many improvements have been found for Black. Kamsky played a much quieter move, heading straight for an endgame. Well, Fischer also played like this, actually. And you can see again that White has this superior pawn structure, 4 against 3 on the king side. But still, Black has very, very easy development. And this pawn majority on the queen side, although you could say it's crippled, Black's pawns are crippled, that you can't easily create a passed pawn. In fact, those pawns can be mobile, and they're a very solid clump of pawns. Well, as we've seen on many occasions in the Berlin defense, for example. So this is still very well-known theory. And what I found interesting was that Carlsen, he wasn't improvising here. It's clear that he knew the theory very well, and I just wonder whether this is part of his preparation for Anand, actually, because we know that Anand loves to play with knights against bishops. So who knows? I just don't think we'll be seeing this in the World Championship match. Carlsen shows that his theory is very good. Now here, Spassky played knight takes e4 against Fischer in their World Championship match in Reykjavik 72. And Spassky actually had no difficulties whatsoever. Game went like this. And, well, again, you can see this nice regular structure, 3 against 2 on the king side for White. But Black is so solid. I do like this bishop here, solidly protected by the pawn. And, okay, you could say that White has a symbolic advantage here, but very difficult to get anywhere, and Spassky had no problems. But it is a much simplified position. And Carlsen tried to squeeze something from the position here and tried to keep the pieces on the board. This has all been seen before, actually. And here, well, this has been seen before, and again, similar to that Fischer-Spassky game, Black is okay, but White is slightly better in a theoretical sense. But Carlsen played a much more interesting move, actually, knight g4. And I just wonder whether this was prepared. Here, again, from a theoretical point of view, I like White's centre pawns. But the problem is that White isn't very well developed. And Black's pieces, well, you can see they're all very, very active. The rooks have lovely open files. And here this is already slightly tricky for White, actually. It seems to me that White should probably play and just develop some pieces. But he was probably worried about his knight being pushed offside. I think it has to go to a5 here. But I think this would have been better than the game. In the game he played knight d2. And Kamsky is starting a kind of regrouping. which is all very well, but this is a great move, and this really ties white up. It's just very difficult for white to develop now. So this, you can see black has nice control over the dark squares on the king side, and this knight is flipping around to a really nice square on f4. Here, for example, bishop a3, you'd like to play bishop a3 and bring the rook across. Knight f4 wins material straight away, hitting the rook and hitting the knight here. So Kamsky has to fall back. And now if rook d1, of course that's the move we'd like to play, then bishop b2 covers. But instead, bishop e5 first. So if rook b1, then the rook comes down to d1, there's no bishop b2. And black has great pressure there, that's uncomfortable for white. So Kamsky decided just to give up a pawn. Well, already I would say that I'm not sure black is winning, but serious advantage, a clear pawn for nothing. So let's see how Carlsen tried to exploit his extra pawn. This is an interesting moment. Normally, if you're a pawn ahead, you want to simplify. But Carlsen dropped the bishop back, and I think this is a very good move because white's king does not have an easy time here. You know, it would like to wander into the middle of the board to support the pawns, but it's always going to be hassled by the bishop. So I think Carlsen, he played a kind of non-standard move, you could say, but I think a very good practical move to keep up the pressure. This knight is so strong on f4. What a wonderful piece. And the big problem for white is that black controls this open file, and that gives black a huge advantage. So here we go. Basically, now Carlsen is just building up very steadily, just making slight improvements to his position before he makes any decisive action. And here he goes for it. White can't do much. So the knight floats in. This is very strong indeed. If this is taken, then the rook will check on d2, and that's the end of that. So rook e2, I think just about forced. And here, I mean, I think there was time pressure involved, but I'm really surprised that Carlsen didn't take the bishop and come in with the rook. This looks very simple indeed. And here, well, black will be able to take the a pawn at his leisure, and perhaps even first rook c2. But it looks tremendous for black. I mean, that seems fairly simple to me. Instead, Carlsen dropped the bishop back. And of course, black is still better. You know, white is really suffering here, but I think that was a good chance for Carlsen, actually. So, okay, Carlsen continued and still controls the open file, still very, very unpleasant for white. There's a lot of shuffling going on here. A4, okay, good move, trying to use this queenside pawn majority. I'm a bit surprised that Kamsky didn't take this and then, you know, try to break up black's pawns. Black is still a pawn up, black is still better here, very active rook, can start to push the c pawn, but that looks like an improvement to me. But instead, rook d2, and here's an interesting moment. Normally, you would try to keep the active rook on the board. You know, maybe rook c2 or something, or bishop c5 check, and rook e3. But instead, Carlsen just exchanged rooks. Now, bishop endings, you have to be very careful, even if you're a pawn up. Often the defender has good drawing chances, but I think Carlsen had seen that he still had excellent winning chances here. Let's see what happened. Certainly after Kamsky's next move, I think this makes life much easier for black because it gives black this outside passed pawn. And now black can create a passed pawn on the queen side, and basically white is torn in two directions and ultimately can't defend, as we're about to see. Maybe he should just bring the king across to stop this black creating a passed pawn. But in this case, I still think Carlsen had excellent winning chances, and I think he appreciated that. I like this move, g5. Simple idea, create this outside pass pawn again. And if this is taken, then the g-pawn is pressurized. If bishop f4, then this is a very simple winning king and pawn ending. Black just gets one of these pawns through. White can't be in two sides of the board at the same time. And if bishop e1, then the king comes in. Or going back to this position after g5, then f5 again, the bishop comes to d6. So I think black would still have very good winning chances here, even after correct defense. But after g4, actually this is, I would say, relatively simple for black to play. So here's a nice move. If the king comes up to f3, then this wins straight away. You play the bishop to c3 and you force the b-pawn home. This happened in the game, but now the h-pawn starts to motor. And although white pawns kind of look impressive here, they're actually not going anywhere. And Carlsen brought the bishop back to f6. Great pass pawn, and there we are. That's the end of that. Again, it's just a very, very simple winning king and pawn ending after this. The king can't stop both pawns, or if white avoids, whoops, let me just go back. If white avoids the trade, then this one goes home. Very simple indeed. So once again, we saw Carlsen's relentless endgame play. He never let Kamsky off the hook. Now, maybe there are a couple of moments where he could have made things a bit quicker. It wasn't perfect play from Carlsen, but really relentless, and actually a very impressive game from the world number one. Nakamura actually lost to Aronian in that round 4, so the scores now, after 4 rounds, Carlsen with 3 out of 4 has leapfrogged Nakamura, who has 2.5, Aronian has 2, and still at the bottom of the table, Gata Kamsky with 0.5 point.